Welcome to the 6th episode of our podcast's 4th season, Scary But True Campfire Stories, brought to you by Dudes Camping. Our goal is to share true stories of strange, supernatural, ghostly, and unexplained as we gather around the virtual campfire. Or maybe you are sitting around a real campfire right now. Maybe you have a strange but true story you'd like to share. Email us at dudescampingstories@gmail.com with your own Bigfoot, UFO, ghost, conspiracy, or just unexplained supernatural story, and we'll consider it for broadcast. Don't forget to visit us on YouTube and Facebook at Dudes Camping. One of the most famous alleged alien abductions occurred on November 5th, 1975, in the Apache-Sitgreaves National Forest in Arizona. Travis Walton, a logger and member of a 7-man crew, disappeared after all members of the crew witnessed a bright, saucer-shaped object hovering over their location. Walton claimed that as he approached the object, a beam of light suddenly appeared and knocked him unconscious. His co-workers fled the scene in fear. Walton reappeared 5 days later, claiming to have been aboard the UFO where he encountered humanoid beings. He described detailed interactions with these beings and different environments inside the craft. The case was extensively investigated, and the other crew members, who were initially suspected of foul play, were polygraphed and found to be truthful about their sighting of the UFO and Walton's disappearance. Sit back, relax, and enjoy Fire in the Sky, the Travis Walton Abduction. It was November 5th, 1975, and I was just a regular guy, a logger, working out in the Apache-Sitgreaves National Forest in Arizona. My crew and me, Mike Rogers, who was like my big brother, Alan Dalis, Dwayne Smith, Ken Peterson, John Goulet, and Steve Pierce. We'd been out there all day, cutting down trees. It was quiet, just the sound of saws and falling wood. And then that peaceful hum of the woods. The sun was starting to go down, painting the sky with orange and purple. We were all packing up, ready to go home, kick off our boots and relax. We were cutting trees, just trying to make a living, like any other day. Little did I know, not a single clue, that this night was going to mess with my head forever. We were driving back, packed into Mike's old pickup truck, the sky getting darker and darker, and the first stars were popping out. We were all laughing and joking, just guys after a long day's work, feeling good. The road was rough, a dirt track really, winding through the tall pines. The air was getting crisp, and you could smell the pine needles. It was a normal ride, just us, the dust kicking up behind the truck, heading for home. Then, out of nowhere, this bright, fiery orange-yellow light just showed up in the sky. It wasn't like any airplane or helicopter I'd ever seen. It was too big, too still, and it just hung there, lighting up the trees around us like it was daytime. It was so bright, so strong, almost like it wasn't from around here. I was scared, sure, but I was also kind of hooked, drawn to it, out of curiosity. "Look at that," I yelled, pointing up. Mike, who was driving, slammed on the brakes. Everyone in the truck turned, and their faces went from confused to, just plain amazed. You could hear the sudden quiet in the cab. All our joking stopped cold. We pulled the truck over to the side of the road, dust settling around us, and then this weird feeling hit me. It was like the light was calling my name, pulling me closer. It wasn't a voice, but a strong, undeniable urge. I felt like I had to go see what it was, like my feet just wanted to move towards it. It was a dumb thing to do, I know that now. My friends were yelling at me, telling me to stay in the truck, asking what the hell I was doing. But I just had to. It wasn't a choice, not really. I climbed out of the truck, the cold air hitting my face, and I could hear my buddies' voices fading behind me, yelling my name as I walked into the dark woods. The light kept getting brighter, shining down and making spooky shadows on the ground. It hummed, a low thrumming sound that I felt more than heard, deep in my bones, as I got closer to where the light was coming from. The trees grew thicker here, but the light cut through the branches, showing me the way. I stepped into a clearing, and my jaw just dropped. Right there, hovering just above the ground, was this huge thing. It was like a perfect disc, a smooth, metallic surface that shimmered in the light it put out. It was big, maybe 20 feet across, looking solid and real. It looked like it was alive, almost breathing, with lights that seemed to pulse around its edge. A wave of pure fear just washed over me. It wasn't just fear of the unknown. It was a deep, gut-wrenching terror. I stood there, frozen, my mind racing 1,000,000 miles a minute, trying to figure out what the hell I was even looking at. This thing was right there, right in front of me, in the middle of our normal logging woods. Suddenly, there was this loud, crazy noise. It sounded like 1,000,000 bees all buzzing at once. A high-pitched whine that vibrated through my whole body. The air around the craft got all hazy, like heat rising off a road in summer. The ground shook under my feet, and I felt this strong pull, like something invisible was dragging me right towards that thing. It was like I was caught in a current, helpless. I remember raising my arms instinctively, throwing them up in front of my face, trying to shield myself from the blinding blue-green light that shot out from the underside of the craft and just swallowed me whole. It felt like I was being hit by something, a powerful force. Right then, I just panicked. I wanted to run, to get the hell out of there, to dive back into the trees and never look back, but my body wouldn't move. It was like I was stuck in a bad dream, caught between being scared stiff and wanting to know what this thing was. My mind screamed at me, "Run!" but my muscles just locked up. The last thing I remember, before everything went dark, was the sensation of being lifted off the ground, a powerful crushing feeling, the world around me fading into that blinding white light. It was like being hit by lightning, but without the pain, just the complete shutdown. When I opened my eyes, everything was blurry at first. Then it slowly came into focus. I was in this strange metallic room. The air was cold, making me shiver, and the walls seemed to shimmer with an unearthly glow, like they were made of polished silver that bent the light. There were no sharp corners. Everything was curved, smooth. I was lying on a table, a flat, hard surface, and when I tried to move, I realized that my body felt incredibly heavy, like I was submerged in deep water or had sandbags tied to my limbs. Panic just shot through me again, a fresh wave of terror. My heart started beating that frantic rhythm again. Where was I? What the heck was going on? I pushed myself up, my muscles straining against that heavy feeling, and that's when I saw them. 3 beings standing there in front of me. They weren't like anything I'd ever seen before, not in a movie, not in a book. They were tall, much taller than me, with slender bodies, almost fragile looking. Their heads were large, out of proportion to their thin necks, and they had these enormous, dark, expressionless eyes that seemed to just penetrate my very soul, looking right through me. They were completely bald, their skin smooth and pale, almost translucent. They looked at me, and I couldn't tell if they were just curious or if they were going to hurt me. Their expressions were unreadable, like statues. My heart raced, and I knew right then and there that I was completely stuck, completely at their mercy. I wanted to scream, to fight, to thrash around and kick, but my terror immobilized me. It was like my vocal cords were frozen, my limbs heavy and useless. I felt an instinct to flee, to escape, but where would I go in this strange metal box? I was trapped in this alien world, surrounded by beings that just defied all logic and understanding. They didn't say anything out loud, not a single sound came from them, but it was like they were talking to each other, a rush of thoughts, not words, bouncing around in my head, a silent conversation I couldn't understand, but could sense. Their huge black eyes were just staring at me, fixed on me, and I could feel their curiosity, but it was mixed with a cold, almost clinical detachment. It was like I was a specimen, something to be observed, not a living, breathing person. One of them, the closest one, stepped a little closer. I felt an overwhelming wave of fear wash over me again, cold and clammy. It reached out with a long, slender, almost spindly finger and touched my forehead. Right above my right eye, the moment it made contact, a torrent of images and sensations flooded into my mind, rushing in so fast I couldn't keep up. There were flashes of stars, distant worlds, nebulae swirling, and a profound, bone-deep sense of isolation, of being utterly alone in a vast, empty space. I gasped, overwhelmed by the intensity of the experience, the sheer volume of information being pushed into my mind. It was as if they were trying to convey something incredibly important, something vast and complex, something beyond my comprehension. Like they were trying to show me where they came from, or what their world was like. But it was too much, too fast. My head felt like it was going to burst. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the connection broke. The images stopped, the sensations faded, and I was left gasping for breath, still shaking from the shock. The beings exchanged glances, silent communication passing between them, and I could sense they were confused, almost frustrated. They seemed to be discussing me in their silent way, their large eyes shifting, and I felt desperate. I needed to escape, to get out of this cold, metal place. In an adrenaline-fueled moment, a burst of raw instinct, I bolted off the table, my heavy feeling momentarily gone. It startled them, I could tell. They took a step back, their faces tilting slightly. I ran toward what appeared to be a door, a seamless section of the wall that glowed faintly. My heart was racing with fear and a desperate determination to get free. As I reached for the handle, or what I thought was a handle, I felt a jolt of energy course through me. A powerful, invisible force pushed me back, like hitting an electric fence. I stumbled, feeling dizzy and disoriented, my vision blurring, and in that instant, I realized I was still very much at their mercy, completely helpless. The beings approached me again, their expressions still unreadable, but their movements were purposeful. I was terrified they would take me back to that table, to subject me to more of their probing, more of those overwhelming images. But instead, they seemed to guide me, almost gently, ushering me toward another door that opened into a bright corridor. It wasn't the same door I tried to open. This one seemed to appear from nowhere. I hesitated, uncertain of what lay ahead. My mind screaming with caution, but instinct, or maybe their silent push drove me forward. As I stepped into the corridor, the atmosphere shifted. The cold, raw fear that had gripped me began to dissipate, replaced by a strange, unsettling sense of calm. The walls glowed softly, a warm, golden light this time, and I felt a pull, as if the craft itself was gently guiding me, ushering me along. I stumbled down the corridor, my senses heightened, every faint hum and subtle shift of light amplified in the silence. It was a longer corridor than I expected, with other openings along the sides, but I didn't dare look into them. Eventually, I reached what appeared to be an exit. It was another seamless section of the wall, but it felt different, like it would open. I pushed through, and suddenly, I was outside, standing in the cool night air. The craft hovered above me, maybe 50 feet up, casting a brilliant light on the landscape, illuminating the surrounding trees as if it were daylight. I looked around, trying to regain my bearings. The woods were quiet, too quiet, but I could feel the immense weight of the experience pressing down on me like a physical burden. And then, just like that, without a sound, the craft shot up into the sky, disappearing into the stars with a speed that left me breathless. Just a tiny speck of light shrinking until it vanished. I stood there, alone, the enormity of what had just happened coming down on me. I was back in the forest, but everything felt different, distorted, surreal. The trees looked the same, but I felt disoriented, as if I had stepped out of one reality and into another, a bad dream from which I couldn't fully wake up. With no idea how long I'd been gone, I stumbled back to where my coworkers had been waiting in the truck. My heart sank when I saw it. The truck was gone. Panic surged through me again, a cold wave. Had it all been a dream? Had I imagined it? I felt a wave of nausea come over me as I realized that I had no way to explain what had just happened. The fear of being alone in the woods at night, of the animals in the dark, clawed at me. But the terror of what I just experienced, of being taken, was far worse. I started to walk back toward the main road, my mind racing with disbelief, trying to make sense of the impossible. I could still feel the coldness of the being's gaze, the heavy weight of their presence lingering in my thoughts, a ghostly touch on my forehead. As I made my way through the trees, tripping over roots, I shouted for my friends, my voice raw and desperate, echoing in the stillness of the night. "Mike! Dwayne! Guys, where are you?" There was no response, only the rustling of leaves and the distant sound of the wind through the pines. I felt a sinking feeling in my stomach, a growing dread that I might never see them again. Had they left? Were they looking for me? I had no idea how much time had passed. Finally, I broke through the tree line and reached the dirt road, the main logging road. My heart sank again as I saw no vehicles and my friends were nowhere in sight. My mind was racing with questions, a million thoughts fighting for space in my head. I needed to find them. I needed to tell them what had happened, to make sense of this nightmare, to prove I wasn't crazy. As I stood there, feeling utterly alone, I noticed the faint glow of headlights approaching in the distance, bouncing over the rough road. Relief, a sudden, overwhelming flood, washed over me as I realized they were returning. Their truck heading back. They piled out of the truck, their faces a mix of concern and confusion, their eyes wide. "Travis, where the hell have you been?" Mike shouted, his voice filled with panic, almost a shout of anger and relief. I opened my mouth to explain, to tell them everything, but the words caught in my throat. How could I convey the terror I had just experienced? How could I make them understand something so impossible? I felt a wave of emotion wash over me, fear, confusion, and a deep, agonizing sense of vulnerability. I was taken, I finally stammered, my voice trembling, barely a whisper. By aliens. Their expressions shifted from concern to skepticism, then to outright disbelief. "What are you talking about, Travis?" Dwayne asked, his brow furrowed, a mix of bewilderment and worry on his face. "You were gone for 5 days, man. We thought we lost you. We called the sheriff. We looked everywhere." 5 days? The realization hit me like a punch to the gut, a physical blow. 5 days. I had no memory of those days. My mind was blank. I'd been gone for nearly a week, and I couldn't fathom what had happened during that time, where I had been. I felt sick to my stomach as the gravity of the situation sank in, the full, crushing weight of it. As I recounted my story, sitting in that truck, my friends listened. Mike, Alan, Dwayne, Ken, John, and Steve, all 6 of them, they listened, their skepticism slowly fading as they saw the genuine terror in my eyes, the raw fear that I couldn't hide. I described the craft, the beings with their huge eyes, the cold metallic room, the overwhelming sense of dread that had consumed me. They exchanged glances. They didn't know what to say, what to think. They had seen the light. They knew something happened, but this? In the days that followed, my life turned into a whirlwind of media attention, investigations, and a tidal wave of skepticism. The local sheriff, deputies, the news reporters, everyone descended on our small logging town. I was thrust into the spotlight, labeled as a UFO abductee, a hoaxer, a crazy person. The world wanted to know my story, but they wanted it sensationalized, twisted, made it into something it wasn't. I felt like a sideshow, a carnival attraction. My incredibly personal and terrifying experience reduced to headlines and sensationalism, picked apart by people who weren't there, who didn't believe. The fear that had gripped me during my abduction began to morph into something else, an obsession, a burning need to understand what had happened. I couldn't sleep right. I couldn't eat right. I started looking for researchers, found UFO groups, and even spoke at conventions. I wanted answers, not just for myself, but for those who might face the same terror. I wanted to prove I wasn't lying, that this was real. But the experience had left deep scars, wounds that weren't visible but ran deep. I struggled with nightmares, waking in a cold sweat, images of the beings in the craft haunting me, playing over and over in my mind like a broken record. I tried to talk to my friends about it, but they could only listen, their expressions a mixture of sympathy and disbelief. They wanted to help. They were good men, but they couldn't fathom the depth of what I had experienced. They hadn't been in that ship, hadn't seen what I saw. The isolation grew deeper, the burden of my truth weighing heavily on my shoulders, making it hard to breathe sometimes. I felt like I was carrying something too heavy for one man. Travis Walton and the Pascagoula abduction are among the most thoroughly documented and widely known accounts of close encounters with UFOs. Their extensive investigation, literary coverage, and cinematic adaptations have significantly shaped public perception and discourse surrounding unidentified aerial phenomena. The credibility of these narratives is bolstered by multiple eyewitness testimonies, the profound impact on those involved, and rigorous scrutiny from both media and investigators. This robust corroboration has cemented their place as cornerstones in the ongoing global conversation about mysterious flying objects. As our technology increases, we are more likely to uncover more and more information about these strange occurrences. Are they visiting from another galaxy? Are they an ancient race of beings hidden deep within the Earth somewhere? Are they interdimensional beings sent to deceive us into a false reality? Only time will tell, but we must continue to ask the questions. Thanks for listening to Scary But True Campfire Stories, presented by Dudes Camping. Narrated by Matthew S. Newbold. Do you have a story that needs to be told? Email us at dudescampingstories@gmail.com with your scary but true story, and we'll consider it for broadcast. Please, hit the like button and subscribe if you enjoyed this story, and leave a comment. It really does help us out. Until next time, we will see you around the campfire.